Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja. Coming up in the next hour. US judge finds ground to slap contempt charge on Trump administration for deportation order violation. Sets April 23rd deadline to comply or face prosecution. White House set to file appeal. Another blood-red end to trading day in the United States. Nasdaq, S&P 500 tumble as stocks slide. Nvidia, AMD stocks hammered. Fed chair says tariffs to fuel inflation and hamper growth. Ahead of US-Iran talks in Rome on Saturday, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi heads to Moscow to discuss the Muscat talks with the Russian top brass. And US Secretary of State Marco Rubio reached Paris to discuss the Ukraine conflict with foreign and defense ministers of Europe and Ukraine. President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff to join as well. White House has planned to seek immediate appellate relief, referring to a process in which parties can request a higher court review and potentially change a decision made by a lower court. Now, this comes after the district court issued contempt notice to Trump administration. The administration could avoid a contempt finding or purge itself of contempt if they provide an explanation of their actions and come into compliance with the original order issued last month. That filing is due by 23rd of April. Trump administration officials could face criminal contempt charges for violating a US federal judge's order halting deportations of alleged members of a Venezuelan gang who had no chance to challenge their removals. The administration had invoked a 227-year-old law meant to protect the US during wartime to carry out this mass deportation drive. DD India's Antra Sinha reports.
A US judge has found probable cause to hold the Trump administration in contempt over its handling of a deportation case involving alleged members of a Venezuelan gang. The ruling from US District Judge James Boasberg escalates the ongoing clash between the executive and judicial branches, with the judge accusing the administration of willfully disregarding a court order to halt deportations to El Salvador. On March 15th, Judge Boasberg issued a temporary restraining order blocking the deportation of over 200 Venezuelans. Now, in a written opinion, the judge concluded that the government engaged in deliberate or reckless disregard of his order when it nevertheless proceeded with the flights. The deportations were carried out under the rarely invoked Alien Enemies Act, a wartime law dating back to 1798. He further allowed government a final chance to purge such contempt, or it will face further court action. The White House has said the administration would seek immediate appellate relief, framing the deportations as necessary to protect American communities from what it called terrorists and criminal illegal migrants.
The enforcement mechanism is exactly what Judge Boasberg is doing. He has found probable cause that they violated his court order, and if a jury convicts, the administration officials responsible will be subject to criminal penalties.
The latest legal battle also ties into the case of Kilmer Abrego Garcia, a man mistakenly deported to El Salvador. A judge has ordered Trump to facilitate his return, an order upheld by the Supreme Court, but his government has said the court did not have the authority to order it to have him returned. White House says Garcia was engaged in human trafficking.
Democrat officials still refuse to accept the will of the American people. Maryland Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen rushed to Dulles Airport this morning to fly to El Salvador, potentially using taxpayer dollars, to demand the release of deported illegal alien MS-13 terrorist. Kilmer Abrego Garcia is an illegal alien MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist who was deported back to his home country.
Meanwhile, Democratic U.S. Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, tried to meet Garcia in El Salvador but was denied access.
Why is the government of El Salvador continuing to imprison a man where they have no evidence he's committed any crime and they've not been provided any evidence from the United States that he's committed a crime? So they should just let him go.
The Trump administration faces more than 150 legal challenges to its policies. Wednesday's ruling by Judge Boasberg is the closest any court has come to suggesting punishing the administration and escalates the confrontation between the judicial and executive branches. Antara Sinha for DD India.
So the tariffs imposed by the Donald Trump administration have caused ripples throughout the world. Many countries' delegations have been going back and forth to the United States for talks, but for now, even the judiciary and the executive branches of the US are in some serious confrontation. Let's connect with Amritpal Singh for more on this story. Amrit, how serious is this statement of a federal judge finding probable cause to hold the Trump administration in criminal contempt of court for violating his orders? What action could the judge take against the administration?
Well, the judge has said that there could be a probable case for contempt. He's given time to the Trump administration or the Department disobedience of the court order, though the court order was later vacated by the Supreme Court. But he argues for the 3 weeks the order was in effect, the U.S. administration did nothing to turn the planes around, because even while the judge was hearing the case, he was told by the defendants, that's the U.S. administration, that the planes had already left the U.S. territory and they were flying to El Salvador. Then he issued a verbal order saying that they may be turned around, which the U.S. administration did not comply with, and then went later to the Supreme Court, which in a bitterly contested order of 5-4 vacated the order of the judge. But the judge says that even if there was legal defect in it, there was willful disobedience of the order, and that is against the Constitution of the United States. The officials, he says, are duty-bound under oath of the Constitution, and therefore there is a case for possible contempt. And if the replies filed by the defendants are not satisfactory, he could initiate prosecution for contempt. What he could do is he could initiate that prosecution. What the defendants or the administration has, they can appeal to a higher court, to a court of appeals, which they are planning to do. The DOJ has said as much. The Director of Communications of White House has said as much. So we'll have to see where this judicial process can go, but the judge can initiate contempt proceedings. Yes, Tanvi.
Okay, and what could be the implications, if any, for other similar cases of deportation and the bigger picture, the confrontation between the executive and judicial branches in the United States?
Well, the confrontation in any democracy does not augur well for democratic institutions, because the executive and judiciary and legislative are three independent pillars of democracy on which the edifice of democracy rests. So if they are at loggerheads, it does not augur well for a well-oiled, smooth-running system. To that extent, yes. It does not. It would create problems for the Trump administration. But in the United States, the judiciary has always been at loggerheads in many cases, not just with the Trump administration and previous administrations too. Because the reason for that is that all federal judges, judges of the Court of Appeals, including the Supreme Court, are political appointees. They are appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate. For example, the Supreme Court justices are justices for life, unlike they are in India. They have a retirement age, and the political appointment is not that direct, but there it's a different system. So there are cases where there
All right, that's Amritpal Singh, DD India correspondent, explaining the confrontation between the judiciary and the executive branches of the United States. Well, he was saying it doesn't augur well for the US democracy overall. So President Trump's tariffs are upending world trade meanwhile and causing unprecedented upheaval in the financial and diplomatic sectors, with close allies questioning the reliability of the United States. Following a tariff of up to 245% on Chinese goods, China expressed willingness to negotiate but demanded the US cease its aggressive tactics. A report.
US President Trump's tariffs have upended the global markets in an unprecedented way. US Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said on Wednesday that unemployment and inflation will likely go north as tariffs' effect become more pronounced. The comments riled already battered markets, adding to uncertainty prevailing in the financial world. But that is not the only aspect which has faced challenges due to uncertainties related to tariffs. The tariffs have forced many nations to scramble their trade representatives to Washington for a possible trade deal that will circumvent tariffs. Much was expected from the US-Japan talks. Trump inserted himself directly into trade talks with Japanese officials. Trump attended the meeting alongside Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, top economic advisors, and later posted on social media that there had been big progress in the talks. And while Tokyo's envoy Ryoshi Akazawa also said that Japan want the deal to be stuck as soon as possible.
Meetings with Japan are a priority. When Trump says there are 70 or 100 countries in line for a meeting, there's no way the president can attend all of them. So the talks with Japan are a priority. I explained Japan's position regarding the impact on Japanese investment and hiring, both in Japan and in the United States, and strongly requested that the US review its series of tariff measures. My understanding is that the US is looking to make a deal in the next 90 days.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni headed to the White House on Thursday to discuss tariffs imposed on the European Union with Trump, while Bessent has invited South Korea's finance minister to Washington for talks next week. Meanwhile, Beijing on Thursday said that if Washington continues to play the tariff numbers game, China will pay no attention to it. Chinese President Xi reached Cambodia on the final leg of a Southeast Asia tour aimed at strengthening trade alliances. The fissures are apparently widening back home too. California's governor and attorney general sued President Donald Trump on Wednesday to try to stop his flurry of tariffs, accusing the president of taking unlawful action to escalate a global trade war. The lawsuit is the largest legal challenge yet to Trump's trade policies. The move marks the strongest pushback yet against a tariff rollout that has left business across the U.S. fretting about uncertainty. For now, the markets remain on tenterhooks, not knowing which way the tariff tempest will blow in the next few days or weeks. Anamika Pandey's report for DD India.
And talking of legal troubles against the Trump administration, California sued the US administration on Wednesday, challenging the president's authority to impose sweeping tariffs that have set off a global trade war. The lawsuit, which was filed in the U.S. District Court for Northern District of California, seeks to block Trump's sweeping tariffs on foreign trading partners, accusing him of abusing his powers and inflicting financial harm on the state and the nation. Democrats asked a judge to bar the Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection from enforcing the tariffs. The act enables a president to freeze and block transactions in response to foreign threats, but doesn't allow the president to adopt tariffs, the suit says. California's move follows rapidly changing tariff plans by the Trump administration. The lawsuit also argues that enacting such tariffs require approval from Congress. Now, Taiwanese chipmaking titan TSMC reported on Thursday a surge in net profit for the first quarter after a series of US tariffs on the critical technology impacting its demand outlook. It also said that it has not detected any change in customer behavior since the announcement of US tariffs on global trade partners. TSMC announced plans for a $100 billion US investment with Trump at the White House last month, on top of $65 billion pledged for 3 plants in the state of Arizona, one of which is up and running. TSMC further added that its net profit for the first 3 months of 2025 rose 60.3% from a year ago to 361.5 billion new Taiwanese dollars. Net revenue for the quarter soared nearly 42% to 839.25 billion new Taiwan dollars year on year, also beating forecasts. Figures released by the company last week showed. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Israel has expanded its military control in Gaza, converting 30% of the territory into a buffer zone. Donald Trump waves off planned Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear sites after divisions emerged in his administration, reports the New York Times. And Defence Conclave 2025 Force of the Future begins in New Delhi.
Nature gives and we take, and sometimes a little too much. But what happens when this balance tips, and who is the most impacted? Let's take a look at some of the solutions that are trying to help these communities.
We want to encourage people to consume more local products. These were caught in environmentally friendly nets, not farmed. That makes a huge difference.
Project Tangaroa. It's working to build a global framework that can help identify which wrecks need to be taken care of first and find the funding for cleanup missions.
We use Esler organic fertilizer for our plants. With organic fertilizer, the yield is better and the soil's health improves.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Tanvi Taneja. Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky's chief of staff said on Thursday that top Ukrainian officials are in Paris to meet EU and US delegations. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, along with Keith Kellogg, Donald Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, reached the French capital to meet leaders to discuss a potential full ceasefire, the involvement of international peacekeepers, and the development of Ukraine's security framework. US Presidential Envoy Steve Witkoff is also expected for talks. French President Emmanuel Macron and Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot will meet Rubio and Witkoff in Paris on Thursday, wherein they will discuss tensions over Iran's nuclear program and other West Asia tensions. This will be Rubio's third trip to Europe since becoming the top US diplomat, having already attended the Munich Security Conference and a NATO meeting in February and March. Separately, French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu will travel to Washington on Thursday to meet US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth for talks also dominated by the issues of Ukraine, Iran and Gaza. Now, the Ukrainian Air Force said on Thursday that Russia launched 5 missiles and 75 drones during an overnight attack. The Air Force shot down 25 drones, with another 30 not reaching their targets, likely due to electronic warfare countermeasures, it said. Meanwhile, Russian Defense Ministry said on Thursday that its air defense systems intercepted 71 Ukrainian drones over 6 Russian regions overnight. Most of the drones, 49, were downed in the Kursk region. In a statement posted on Telegram, Russia said that Ukrainian drones had attacked the town of Shuya, but that no casualties or damage had been inflicted. Now, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will visit Russia on Thursday to consult with Moscow regarding the latest talks between Iran and the United States in Oman. Araghchi will meet his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov and other senior officials during the visit. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman said Araghchi will discuss the latest developments related to the Oman talks with the Russian top brass. Russia, a party to Iran's 2015 nuclear pact, has supported Tehran's right to have a civilian nuclear program. Meanwhile, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Mariano Grossi, warned on Wednesday that Iran is now not far off from making its own nuclear weapons. In an interview to a French newspaper, Grossi said, Iran have the pieces and one day they could eventually put them together. Grossi is visiting Iran in an attempt to narrow gaps between Tehran and the agency over unresolved issues. The IAEA chief met with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Tehran on Wednesday, ahead of a planned second round of talks between Iran and the US in Rome on Saturday. Grossi described his meeting with Araghchi as important. He also expected to meet Mohammad Islami, who heads Iran's nuclear energy agency. Now, in more news trickling from the United States, President Donald Trump blocked Israel's planned strike on Iranian nuclear sites, opting for negotiations instead. This was revealed by the New York Times, stating that Israel had planned to attack in May to set back Iran's nuclear program by a year or more. Trump, however, decided to pursue diplomacy after months of debate. The US and Iran recently held positive and constructive talks in Oman, with the second round scheduled for Saturday in Rome. Israel has expanded its military control in Gaza, converting 30% of the territory into a buffer zone. The Israeli military has achieved operational control over key areas and routes, striking 1,200 targets and conducting targeted eliminations. Israel has proposed a 45-day ceasefire, which includes hostage release and disarmament of Hamas. However, Hamas says its weapons won't be subject to negotiations. Israel continues to block humanitarian aid, citing it as pressure to prevent Hamas from using it as a tool. The International Court of Justice will hold hearings on Israel's humanitarian obligations towards the Palestinians. The situation remains dire on both sides. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is pushing to get hostages held in Gaza released. He met with his negotiating team and security chiefs to discuss the situation. According to the office, Netanyahu instructed his team to keep working towards securing the hostages' release. Now, the Israeli army released a video showing its troops operating in Gaza. Defense Minister Israel Katz said that Israeli troops will stick around in the buffer zones they have created in Gaza, even if a peace deal is reached. This comes as efforts to revive a ceasefire agreement have hit a snag. Since restarting military operations last month, Israel has taken control of a big chunk of Gaza, pushing over 2 million people into smaller areas. Israel says it's a complex situation and it's unclear what will happen next. The conflict has caused significant displacement and humanitarian concerns. On to Canada now. The leaders of major political parties debated for the first time ahead of early elections scheduled for April 28th. The debate focused on tariffs and negotiating with US President Trump, housing issues, cost of living concerns and immigration. Liberal leader Mark Carney was a frequent target, while NDP leader Jagmeet Singh accused the moderator of unfairly shutting down his attempts to discuss health care. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre spoke on terrorism and deportation.
We are still in a crisis, the most serious crisis of our lives. We have to react with overwhelming force. Yes, we have to lower taxes, some taxes. Yes, we have to reduce bureaucracy, but government must act in a crisis, so we must have an aligned government.
I am because I will put Canada first. I will never compromise our country's interest, and I'm going to control what we can here. Obviously, no one is going to be able to control Donald Trump's decisions, but we can control our domestic economy by reversing the economic policies the Liberals have put in place that have weakened our country and made us more dependent on the Americans.
Puerto Rico was hit with a massive power outage after energy plants across the island unexpectedly shut down on Wednesday. People were seen filling bins with fuel for their electric generators at home, and many businesses were forced to close. Locals expressed frustration, stating that the outrageous power outages have been occurring too frequently. Power generator Genera stated that it was working to bring backup units online and investigate the cause of the incident. Puerto Rico has long dealt with chronic power outages, including a blackout on New Year's Eve, as its infrastructure crumbles rather frequently. Back in India, Defence Conclave 2025 Force of the Future began in New Delhi today. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh delivered the keynote address in which he asserted that India is now self-reliant in defence with a strong industrial base that not only meets Indian needs but also exports to the world. He warned that future conflicts will be unpredictable and will be fought in many domains such as the cyber domain as well. He expressed confidence that in the wake of uncertainty of global supply chains, India has emerged as a reliable partner for the world.
भारत का मेक इन इंडिया प्रोग्राम हमारे देश के डिफेंस प्रोडक्शन को तो मजबूत बना ही रहा है, साथ ही दुनिया की डिफेंस सप्लाई चेन को भी रेजिलिएंट और फ्लेक्सिबल बनाने की कैपेबिलिटी धीरे धीरे बना रहा है। भारत की डिफेंस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कैपेबिलिटीज जहां नेशनल सिक्योरिटी और स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी के लिए काम कर रही हैं, वहीं ग्लोबल सप्लाई शॉक से मैन्युफैक्चरिंग को इंसुलेट भी कर रही हैं। हमारी गवर्नमेंट देश में डिफेंस सेक्टर को मजबूती देने के पीछे कोई जंग छेड़ने का, कोई वार छेड़ने का हमारा इरादा नहीं है। हमारी डिफेंस कैपेबिलिटीज एक क्रेडिबल डेटरेंस की तरह है, जिसका उद्देश्य पीस एंड ट्रैंक्विलिटी बनाए रखना।
More from Asia. Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in the Cambodian capital, Phnom Penh, on Thursday, the last stop of his three-nation trip in Southeast Asia. The Chinese president called on Cambodia to jointly oppose hegemonism, power politics and bloc confrontation so as to defend common interests of both countries and other developing countries. According to Chinese state news agency Xinhua, Xi urged Cambodia to jointly resist protectionism and maintain an open and cooperative international environment. The Chinese president is on a three Southeast Asian nations visit as Beijing seeks to strengthen regional trade ties and offset the impact of huge tariffs imposed by his US counterpart, Donald Trump. And next we take a look at other stories making news around the world. Animals at the Whipsnade Zoo in England were treated to an Easter-themed hunt as keepers decorated their enclosures with props and boxes for the upcoming holiday. The zoo's fairies were entertained by baskets filled with painted eggs and straw, while in the endangered European rockhopper penguins were put on top of larger Easter eggs props for the birds to find. In the Philippines, Catholic devotees took part in self-flagellation rituals as a display of extreme devotion during the Holy Week. The tradition meant to reenact the suffering of Jesus Christ. These rituals remain deeply rooted in the Filipino culture and continue to draw widespread public and media attention every year. A Japanese town is holding competitive snowball fighting tournament. The tournament began as a tradition since 1989, intended to revitalize the local town. It evolved into a major event with over 1,000 competitors and a comparable crowd size. There is now even an international snowball fight federation with 13 member nations in it, including Australia. You're watching DD India News. Still to come on this show. We'll speak to our expert to decode the reaction of world markets due to the ongoing tariff war. Agriculture Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan leads the Indian delegation at the 15th BRICS Agriculture Ministers meeting in Brazil.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium, we'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Tanvi Taneja. A quick reminder of the headlines we're tracking at this hour. A US judge finds ground to slap contempt charges on Trump administration for deportation order violation. Sets April 23rd deadline to comply or face prosecution. White House set to file appeal. Another blood-red end to trading day in the United States. NASDAQ and S&P 500 tumble as stocks slide. Nvidia, AMD stocks hammered. Fed chair says tariffs to fuel inflation and hamper growth. Ahead of US-Iran talks in Rome on Saturday, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi heads to Moscow to discuss the Muscat talks with the Russian top brass. And US Secretary of State Marco Rubio reaches Paris to discuss the Ukraine conflict with foreign and defense ministers of Europe and Ukraine. President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff to join as well. So US stocks took a nosedive on Wednesday with the Dow Jones plummeting around 700 points to 39,669. The S&P 500 dropped 121 points to 5,276 and the Nasdaq Composite Index falling 516 points to 16,307. Nvidia's warning about $5.5 billion hit in charges due to the new US curbs on chip exports to China did not help, with shares falling 6.9%. Further, US Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's comments on slowing economic growth and higher inflation due to tariffs also spooked investors.
Today's news, obviously, with some of the tariffs around some tech names and some basically reducing some trade around some semiconductor names, I think is what really we're seeing from a market reaction. We think you're going to continue to see tech on the downdraft just because a lot of this tariff noise is going to affect them specifically, because now we're focused on China. Before, when it was a worldwide tariff issue, there's a lot of companies that had some kind of skin in the game, if you will. With China, a lot of it's tech. And so I think a lot of the tech money is going to be pulling out, going to other places.
And talking of the Indian benchmark equity indices, well, they have rebounded sharply in afternoon trade on Thursday, with the Sensex rallying around 1,400 points and Nifty near the 23,800 mark when reports last came in. This is a strong intraday recovery. The Indian rupee strengthened for the fourth straight session, appreciating 10 paise to 85 rupees 54 paise against the US dollar in early trade. This was supported by foreign capital inflows and a soft greenback globally. Talking of other Asian markets, shares in Tokyo rose more than 1%, with Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, Sydney, Seoul, Wellington, Jakarta also up, though Taipei and Bangkok edged down. And Avinash Gorakshkar, share market expert, joins us on the show now. Thank you, sir, for being part of the show. Well, US stock markets saw huge losses after President Trump imposed tariffs on numerous countries on April 2nd. But after Trump announced a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs, US stocks soared and they remain volatile. Could you break down what is happening in the US stock markets?
Yeah, I think, first of all, good afternoon. I think clearly the US markets is witnessing a lot of volatility because clearly post April 2nd, when the President Donald Trump announced tariffs, these tariffs were significantly much higher than what the street expected. And I think this was imposed on many countries, including China, which now just recently has been imposed a tariff of almost 245%. I think clearly the US markets have been volatile because a lot of imports happen from China and from the European countries. So typically, whenever tariffs go up, the prices of these products will obviously go up, inflation will increase. And I think recently Mr. Powell, who's the Fed governor, chairman, he clearly mentioned that unless inflation comes down, interest rates are going to not going to come down in a hurry. So that has also made a little bit of uncomfortableness for the US markets. In fact, yesterday we saw a sell-off on the Nasdaq. Nvidia, which makes semiconductor chips, was down by almost 7% because they have been now told that they cannot export their chips to China. So I think China has been a very big customer for them. So I think across the board we saw a sell-off on the tech side yesterday. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the markets, and unless the markets get some clarity as to how the tariffs would come out finally, I think you're going to see the markets there going to be quite volatile. Because clearly, I think for the next 1 or 2 quarters, most of the corporates there and obviously the US citizens will be watching very closely as to how this tariff issue finally gets resolved. Because obviously, if it doesn't get resolved, then I think the US economy may in fact see a demand contraction and move into a recession also. So I think markets will be volatile for some more time.
Okay, Avinash, what does the volatility in the US stock markets amid tariff fears mean for individual investors, US companies looking to raise capital, and the US economy at large? Will US companies manufacture more in the US instead of overseas as a result?
See, I think in the short term, it's very unlikely that US companies will manufacture anything in the country because, manufacturing is a very long process. If tariff rates change dramatically, then I think, even fresh investments will take some time. But I think US companies will have to work out some deals with European or maybe Indian companies because, to manufacture in US, the biggest challenge is the labor cost. Labor cost is increasingly expensive, and in some sectors like textiles, for example, the amount of labor required to manufacture, textile is also humongously very large, which is not possible in a country like US. So net, I think, trade deals will have to be worked out, negotiations will have to be worked out. But at least for the next couple of years, it's very difficult to believe that US will make everything in-house. It's a long process and it may take a long time for that to happen.
Can we expect US markets to stabilize and rally anytime soon, or are US stocks in for a period of weakness or volatility at least for a few months till the tariffs issue is sorted out?
No, I think markets will take some time to stabilize because clearly, I think the economy is in a very precarious position. They've got a record debt position in terms of the government debt. And most importantly, once the tariff issues came up, what happened was a lot of international investors, a lot of countries who had invested in US bonds started selling them. So Mr. Trump had to do something to, do a little bit of damage control. And that is why he gave a 90-day pause. Hopefully, if the tariffs are brought down to reasonable levels, if we probably get a tariff of, say, 12-13% from 26%, I'm talking for India, I think then only one could see a resumption of good recovery for the US market because US is an import-dependent country. So I think at least for the next couple of quarters till September, you can expect the markets to remain volatile. Only after that, some stability could come in.
And what about US semiconductor companies? How are their fortunes going to be affected by the tariffs? Will they likely manufacture more in the US as a result of these tariffs?
No, I think, definitely they would think of making the semiconductor chips in the US, but I think it's a long drawn process. My sense is that, companies which are already making chips, I think somebody like Nvidia has been clearly told that not to export to China. So probably what would happen is they would look at other possible markets where they could export their products. But I think, yes, the focus of the Trump administration is to ensure that more semiconductor production happens in the US rather than importing them.
And turning to domestic stock markets, Avinash, after the initial huge fall, the key stock indices, the Sensex and the Nifty have recovered much of the ground they'd lost after the US imposed tariffs, yet the market remain volatile. Where is it likely to go from here, and what will it take for the stock markets to rally once again?
No, I think my sense is that, now the markets here are rejoicing because clearly the U-turn which Mr. Donald Trump made by announcing a 90-day pause clearly indicates that the initial effort was just to get all the trading partners, most of the global trading partners on the table to negotiate. So I think we are a protected market, and fortunately, most of the European countries, the US, companies are looking at India as a very strong consumption-driven market. And I think obviously there's a large kind of potential here for those companies. So typically that is one of the reasons. Plus on the currency side, the dollar has become weak. The rupee has stabilized. The dollar index has come down. and we have been seeing a lot of FI buying happening now slowly on the cash market side. So I think all this has made investors here confident that the panic is out of the market, and I think maybe in the next 3 to 6 months, probably we could see a good recovery. I think the jump in the markets has been largely because of the currency stabilizing and of course FI liquidity coming back. And of course, corporate results have been slightly better than what the street expected. So, all these factors have made the market slightly positive. But I think we could consolidate, at around 24,000 odd levels. The market is definitely looking forward for better numbers, from the April to June quarter. So I think on correction, it's a good opportunity to accumulate quality stocks.
Okay. Can we expect India to quickly sort out the tariffs issue with the US more quickly perhaps than many other countries? What is your view?
No, I think, we were the first country to visit Trump after he got elected. Mr. Modi had a very fruitful discussion with him. And I think my sense is that very soon by, say, August or September, we could get a proper free trade policy, announced. And that is definitely going to be a big positive. I think unlike, countries like China, Mexico, Canada, which are largely export-oriented economies, India fortunately is not export-dependent. We have a large domestic market. So I'm looking forward. I think we could get some positive news in the second quarter of this financial year.
Thank you very much, Avinash Gorakshka, for sharing your valuable insights on the global markets, global economy, and of course, Indian prospects. Thank you very much for being with us. Union Minister for Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, is currently on a 5-day visit to Brazil. The minister held a meeting with the Brazilian business community, mainly focusing on soya production and mechanization of agriculture.
कहते हुए गर्व है कि प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में भारत ने अपनी खाद्य सुरक्षा सुनिश्चित कर ली है। दुनिया के कई देशों को भी हम एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, लेकिन भारत और ब्राजील दोनों मिलकर पूरी दुनिया की खाद्य सुरक्षा को सुनिश्चित करने का बहुत महत्वपूर्ण काम कर सकते हैं और इसलिए दोनों में सहयोग होगा। हम पर्यावरण भी बेहतर बनाने का काम कर सकते हैं, उस पर भी हम आपस में सहयोग करेंगे। बिजनेस कम्युनिटी से, जिसमें कई प्रमुख ऑर्गेनाइजेशन थे, अभियोगों जैसे, आज बहुत महत्वपूर्ण चर्चा हुई है। भारत और ब्राजील दोनों मित्र राष्ट्र हैं और जहां तक कृषि का सवाल है, भारत में आज भी 45% जनता खेती के काम में लगी है और कृषि ब्राजील की अर्थव्यवस्था की भी रीढ़ है। दोनों में सहयोग की अपार संभावनाएं हैं। अब जैसे सोयाबीन का उत्पादन यहां बहुत ज्यादा है भारत के मुकाबले, तो भारत में सोयाबीन का उत्पादन कैसे बढ़े, उत्पादन केवल नहीं, प्रोसेसिंग के क्षेत्र में भी हम साथ मिलकर काम कर सकते हैं। अभी सोया तेल आयात करता है भारत ब्राजील से, लेकिन इस पर भी हमने चर्चा की है कि केवल एक्सपोर्ट नहीं, इन्वेस्ट भी वहां करें।
Niti Aayog CEO BVR Subramaniam has said that India will become the third largest economy in the world in the next 3 years, leaving behind Germany and Japan. Addressing a program organized at the Hindu College of Delhi University in New Delhi today, he said that India can become the second largest economy in the world by 2047. He said that a target has been set to increase the per capita income of the country to $18,000 by 2047.
As the nation is growing, we have set an ambitious goal for ourselves to become Vikasit Bharat 2047. What does that mean? We want to be a developed nation by 2047. What does that mean? There is a World Bank cutoff for becoming a high-income nation. It's about $14,000. Today we are about $2,500 per capita income. The goal is to have a per capita income of $18,000 by 2047. $18,000 makes us comfortably a high-income country and certainly a developed country. But it's not only that. It's a developed country with all the attributes of a developed country. It's not just money. It's also about high quality of life, good living conditions, healthcare, education, old age care, all that, and a good education system, which you expect in a developed country. I think that's the ambition.
And now we take a look at other stories making news in India. The Supreme Court of India on Thursday allowed the West Bengal teachers to continue till the fresh selection process is completed. These teachers' appointments were cancelled due to irregularities in the recruitment process. The court also directed the West Bengal government to start a fresh recruitment drive by May 31st and finish it by December 31st. Indian businessman Robert Vadra appeared before the Enforcement Directorate for the third consecutive day in connection with a Gurugram land deal case. The ED has been probing Vadra in land deal cases, with the latest round of questioning focused on alleged irregularities in a land acquisition in Haryana's Gurugram district. The Department of Chemicals and Petrochemicals is organizing a one-day Manthan Shivir in New Delhi on Thursday, with discussions focusing on fostering long-term development of the Indian chemical and petrochemical sector. The discussions and deliberations will be centered on 6 thematic areas. Several parts of Shimla in India's north witnessed trees being uprooted as a result of intense rain lashed in the city on Wednesday. The storm also led to power outages, with the electricity supply being restored to the region. IMD has cautioned of an incoming rainfall across Himachal Pradesh. Still to come on DD India News Hour. In football, Arsenal reached Champions League semi-finals after a long gap of 16 years. And the vibrant city of Jodhpur in India's Rajasthan comes alive with the 16-day-long Dhinga Carnival.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Tanvi Taneja. India has signed the headquarters agreement with the International Big Cat Alliance, or IBCA, marking a major step in global wildlife conservation. Secretary East P. Kumaran and IBCA DG Dr. S.P. Yadav formalized the pact in New Delhi. The Government of India will provide 150 crore rupees over 5 years from 2023-24 fiscal to 2028-29 fiscal for corpus creation, infrastructure and operations. The IBCA aims to conserve 7 big cats: tigers, lions, leopards, snow leopards, cheetahs, jaguars and pumas, underscoring India's global leadership in biodiversity conservation. Russian representatives are participating in a 2-day program at Mahatma Gandhi Kashi Vidyapith. The main objective of the event is to educate students about India-Russia relations and to encourage more students in India to learn and understand the Russian language. The initiative, a memorandum of understanding, has been signed between the Russian Library for Young Adults in Moscow and the Mahatma Gandhi Kashi Vidyapith Library. During the program, the Russian representatives interacted with the students, sharing insights about Russian culture and the long-standing relationship between India and Russia, while also engaging with the students to hear their perspectives.
My colleague and me deliver lectures for Indian students about programs in Russian Federation, about Russian culture as well. I hope this collaboration will enrich both sides, and moreover today your students, I will deliver a lecture for your students about Russian culture, Russian language programs which are available in Russia for Indian students, and I hope this information will also be very useful for them and it will open new opportunities for students of Mahatma Gandhi Kashi Vidyapith University.
Sri Lanka's Hotel Ambayalu, whose female manager is Jivanti Adhikari, is located on the banks of the Kandalama Lake in the lush green hills of central Sri Lanka. It was inaugurated in January with a special feature, the staff being all women. This is a first in the country designated to promote women in the tourism sector, where 90% of the hotel jobs are held by men. She explained how the idea arose from the twin blows that hit the island's tourism industry, first from COVID-19, then the financial crisis of 2022, followed by the political unrest. Owner Chandra Vikramasinghe, president of the Thema Collection Group, which runs 14 hotels, said she wanted to showcase what women can do if given a chance. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for some sporting action. Mitchell Starc bowled a stunning final over as Delhi Capitals defeated Rajasthan Royals in a dramatic super over finish after both teams finished tied on 188 in their IPL 2025 match on Wednesday. Pace ace Starc starred with the ball, defending 9 runs in the final over to force the tie and then conceding just 11 runs in the super over, where 2 crucial runouts of Shimron Hetmeyer and Riyan Parag tilted the balance. Chasing 12 in the super over, KL Rahul struck a double and a boundary before T. Stubbs launched a 6 to seal victory in 4 balls. Delhi Capitals, led by Akshar Patel, have climbed to the top of the table with 5 wins in 6 matches. Earlier, Abhishek Purell top scored with 49, while Akshar and Stubbs added rapid 34, lifting Delhi to a competitive 188 for 5. Meanwhile, Rajasthan's chase was led by Yashasvi Jaiswal and Nitish Rana, both scoring 51, but regular wickets hampered momentum. Rajasthan have suffered their 5th loss in 7 games now. Mumbai Indians will face Sunrisers Hyderabad in the 33rd match of the Indian Premier League on Thursday evening. Both the former champions have managed just 2 wins in 6 games so far, but with home comfort, Mumbai will look to get the better of the Sunrisers in what could be a potentially high-scoring IPL match. Mumbai are unlikely to make any changes, having beaten Delhi Capitals in their previous game, implying that the use of Karn Sharma as an impact sub could be on the cards. Meanwhile, for Hyderabad, the main worry pertains to their top order, which has failed to fire in unison, although Ishan Kishan will be raring to make it count against Mumbai on what had been his home ground for several seasons. And on to football now. Arsenal staved off Champions League holder Real Madrid and its rich history of unlikely comebacks to snatch a 2-1 victory on Wednesday night and reach the semi-finals with a superb 5-1 aggregate triumph. Bukayo Saka, who missed a first-half penalty, sent Arsenal ahead, and although Vinicius Jr. levelled the 15-time winner, was never close to making up the deficit. Later, Gabriel Martinelli rubbed salt on Real's wounds with a stoppage-time winner for Arsenal. Arsenal's 3-0 quarter-final first-leg triumph last week gave them a vital cushion as they made the Final Four for the first time since 2009. The Gunners will face Paris Saint-Germain in the semi-final on 30th April in a hope to further their run to lift the Champions Trophy for the first time. Meanwhile, Inter Milan have also reached the semi-finals of the Champions League after drawing 2-2 with Bayern Munich to win 4-3 on aggregate. Goals from captain El Martinez and Benjamin Pavard cancelled out Harry Kane's strike for Bayern, which levelled the tie in the 52nd minute. Eric Dier's looping header in the 75th minute earned Bayern a draw, but that wasn't enough for Vincent Kompany's side to continue its bid to be crowned the King of Europe for a 7th time. This win has for sure showed that Inter is more than capable of reaching the final of Europe's elite club competition, as it did 2 years ago when it was narrowly beaten by Manchester City. Italian champion Inter Milan will face Barcelona in the semi-final on 30th of April. And snowball fights may seem like a bit of fun, but in Japan, it's a serious sport. Competitions attract large home crowds, but organizers are keen for more international attention. High in the hills of Hokkaido, a snowball fighting tournament began in 1989. Intended to revitalize the local town, the tournament evolved into a major event with over 1,000 competitors. There is now even an international snowball fight federation with 13 member nations, including Australia. And next we take you to the vibrant city of Jodhpur in India's Rajasthan. It came alive with the Dhinga Carnival as the 16-day-long cultural extravaganza kicked off on Wednesday. Rooted in folklore and tradition, the festival sees women dressed as goddesses and mythical figures patrolling the streets at night. From colourful attires to quirky rituals, the festival blends divinity and drama, making it one of Rajasthan's most eccentric and empowering festivals. So that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live, and you can also download our DD India mobile app for quick news and updates from India and the world. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.